All right. So we're going to start this rose. I'm starting with black, and again, I have two brushes, depending on which you guys are doing first. And I'm just going to start wherever I feel. So generally, I'll start in a small spot. And fade out. I like to go in to my black and do a fade that way. Mike likes to put a little water line, which both work fine. As you're working on your pieces, whichever works for you, whether or not you want to put a water line or go into your fade like I'm doing and bringing it out, is entirely up to you. Had too much sugar today, my spit's all slimy. I would say that one technique to another, both have their places. I would also say that maybe one is a little bit more advanced than the other. So wherever you're comfortable, and like I like to tell anybody, if you're not having fun, then what's the point of doing it? This leaf is a little bigger, so I'm going to bring a little bit more black out. The more you do something, the better off, the more proficient you're going to get. And watercolor, or ink in this particular case, is hard to control. So try not to get frustrated if it goes too far. It's only paper. You can always try again. But once that ink is in there, like Mike said, it's not going to go anywhere. So you want to try to be as deliberate and as efficient as possible. Where I'm putting my black is where I'd imagine a shade or a shadow might be. So you can choose to do and put your black where I'm putting it, or maybe somewhere else where you might think that a shadow would be. Like Mike was doing, in case you're watching these in a different order, here would be like a water line, and then you could go in and put your black. Maybe you're going to put a name or a symbol in your banner. So you just want to leave enough room to do that. We didn't put a name or a banner or a symbol or anything in your banner because maybe you want to put your mom's name or your dog's name or your wife's name or something like that in there. It's a little warm in my apartment today, so everything's drying pretty quickly. If your pigment dries up on you, or your water or spit, depending, it's okay to go back in there and wet it down. You'll know if it's dry if you can no longer see the reflection of the light on your paper. We've provided you with brushes today that no one has used, so don't think that you're putting a paintbrush in your mouth that somebody else has had in their mouth. Mike and I have known each other for a while, so we're sharing spit today.
I just realized
I'm also chewing nicotine gum, so you may get a little bit of a buzz the next time you use these.
Thanks for that.
No problem. I think that looks all right.
Your hair's getting in the way a little bit there, bub.
Sorry. Good now?
Yep.
So there's an example of maybe I brought my black out too far, you know? So I'm going to take a little bit of water and I'm going to push back into my black and try to pick some of that up. You got to move a little quicker when you do that. So just goes to show you that shit happens, you know? Like, is that going to be all right? Hell yeah, it's going to be all right because it's on there now. No sense in getting too worried about it. Just move on. Case in point, in this small area, there's a heavy amount of black in there. Even though it's a small little pool, that's a lot of black, and it's going to move pretty quickly. So what you can do is take your brush, dry it out a little bit, your same pigment brush, and you can kind of pick some of that black up. It's hard to see on the camera, I'm sure, but that'll stop that pool of black from spreading out all crazy and wide. Smaller spaces are going to require a little bit more control. If you think you've got too much paint in your brush or ink in your brush, go ahead and rinse it out. Go back in your ink well, pick up the amount of pigment that you want, and move forward, okay? This is so odd talking to no one but everyone at the same time. If at any point you guys are watching this and you want some help, just grab one of us, say what's up. We don't bite. I mean, I bite, but you want your fade to go out a little further, a little quicker, instead of just using the tip of your brush, you can flatten that out a little bit, and it'll help that fade move a little bit better for you. Also remember that the rule of thirds is a real thing that we use very often in tattooing when we're approaching a tattoo. Is there enough room for our color? So when you're considering your black and how much black to use, maybe you're just going to do a black and gray piece. So in that case, bring your black out a little further to compensate for that third. You know, if it's a black and gray piece and you want it to be really dark, 2/3. If it's a black and gray piece and you want it to be a little lighter, you know, maybe just stick to the third, based on your style and what you like, okay? Again, if you're not having fun, then what's the point of doing anything? I feel kind of Bob Rossi saying that. Yeah, I just put a little happy little black right in there. Just a happy little amount of black. So I'm pretty content with that. Some people would put more black in here, in the center. I think I will. Just a tiny bit in that little fold. And then maybe just a tiny bit right there. And I think maybe I'll just put a tiny bit right there. Doesn't mean you guys have to. I just wanted that to look a little deeper. So I think I'm going to move on now. Well, actually, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more black on the sleeves. Sorry, my dog's barking. And I think that we'll put a little bit of black right there. All right, my black's done. And I'm going to move on to my next darkest color, which is going to be green. Well, scratch that. A little bit of black right there. It's a happy little amount of black. Here's another example of too much water. So I move that black out a little further than I wanted. No big deal. Get your brush and then just go back into that and push it back a little bit. There you go. All right, now moving on. Let's get back into the green. And we'll go right back into our black. And the same idea. Just moving that color out. My style, I don't mind bringing that wash out a little bit. You can leave it all the way to raw, or I'm sorry, just blank white paper, you know, but the way I paint is a little bit more illustrative. So I will bring that fade out not too far, or a little further, and not really care, because I know that if I were to do this, tattoo this traditionally, that where that super light tone is, it's going to be my skin tone. You know, maybe I don't want to approach it a little bit more traditionally and leave this area open or paper, but I don't know, I just like the way it looks going a little further. As you can see, the pigment goes pretty far. A little goes a long way, so be mindful of that when you're moving forward. In tattooing, there's a ton of rules, you know, those that know them take pride in that knowledge, and I'm not here to try to diminish that by any means, but I have been tattooing since 2008, and I'm proud of the lessons and rules that I've learned, but I also embrace my own little touches to how I paint flash. This is a tried and true Sailor Jerry design, and try to honor that legacy. Let's also bring in a little bit of my flair in there. There's going to be some people out there that tell you that's wrong. You know, they're entitled to their opinion, but there's nothing wrong with having your own little bit of flair either. Tattooing is a celebration of one's individuality, so who's to say that showing that in your art is wrong? I would say that it's encouraged in the right places. So here you have, maybe you can see on the camera, there's a little line, you know, where your pigment maybe dried out on you and you couldn't get it out far enough. Again, no big deal. Just go back in to that line and bring that pigment out and kind of camouflage that line. You kind of have to move quick. Maybe I'm not moving fast enough. Maybe my apartment's a little too dry. But it's not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. There are areas like this one that I don't feel the need for the third. I'm going to go ahead and fill that up. Here, I'm going to leave a little bit. And then here, I'm going to leave a little bit. That pigment dried up on me right there. So I'll just go right back on top of that line, add a little pigment, and fade it out. No big deal. Here, I didn't put any black. Just a style thing. Just like the way it looks. And I'm going to move forward now. And that's my green. Rinse your brush out real good. You want to make sure that you are free of any pigment when you go to your next color. You're progressively going to get lighter, so if you don't rinse your brush out real well, chances are you're going to pick up. I'm moving to red now. I want this rose to be a nice traditional red. In this case, your fades are going to be a little bigger, so I'm going to get my paper a little wet because I've noticed that we're a little dry in this room. And I'm going to go ahead and put it right on top and then fade. And I'll go back in and fill in my dark areas. Maybe there's a little bit of a line there, so there's in this case. And go back in with some water or spit. Hit that again. Give yourself a nice fade that kind of rounds to the exterior line and kind of complements that shape. And moving on. This leaf is a little smaller, or petal is a little smaller, so I'm not going to do the little water trick to help my fade, but I am going to use a little bit of pigment, maybe a little more pigment, to help that move out a little bit. Notice my brush is kind of following the shape of that exterior line. Again, it's just a little larger of a petal. So instead of using an excess amount of water, I'll use a touch more pigment. This is kind of an interesting area. I'm gonna have the fade on either side.